John Clayton of 710 ESPN Seattle joining us. You can also read John's columns in the Washington Post, which are always entertaining. And John, I know there's a lot of football to get to, so we'll start locally and then we'll just kind of branch out. Seahawks picked 27th in the draft. They have 8 picks in all. What's the biggest need for this team?
No question, it's defensive end, pass rushing defensive end. Last year they went from over 40 sacks down to 28, and so now they've got to get that pass rush going, because what it did, it put more pressure on the secondary, it put more pressure on the linebackers, it forced them out of the normal things that they like to do. And so what they have to do is find a couple answers to get better at defensive end. Obviously keeping Jadeveon Clowney is going to be one of the keys, but he may be too pricey to keep. So what is going to be the next option? And after that, what's going to be the option after that? They can go into the draft at 27, but if you really look at the way the defensive end situation is, it's not that deep up top. And so they might have to get one in the later rounds, but that might not be the immediate answer. So the key right now, more than anything else, and you can talk about, finding a third receiver, you can talk finding a right tackle, they need pass rushing help at defensive end.
Clowney, is he too rich for the Seahawks blood?
Seems like it, yeah. And again, it's like, is he right in asking for more than $20 million? Yeah, he is. I mean, he's the best edge rusher that's going to hit free agency, because what's going to happen this year, and you'll watch this happen as we get closer to the start of free agency, there's going to be a lot of franchised edge rushers. And so they would be available in trades, but they wouldn't be available in free agency. The agreement that happened last year puts Clowney in a position to be free and clear and negotiate with anybody. And so, maybe he won't get to 20 to 21 million, but still, I think it's going to be more pricey than this team wants to go. And so a lot of it league-wide too is his injury history. He's one of the 6 or 7 best edge rushers in the game, but injuries have really hurt him a little bit.
Do you think that almost every NFL team is always looking for a pass rusher, just like they always need a quarterback, they always need a pass rusher?
Oh yeah, and even more so now, because what you need is the ability not just to get to the quarterback, but find the quarterback. And you watched it more last year than any other year. Now you have more mobile quarterbacks. The mobile quarterbacks are totally taking over from the pocket passers, and not only do you have to try to get them fast, but then you have to chase them down. So the more speed and pass rushing ability you have is going to be the key to the defense, because at the moment, and I know I talked to Pete Carroll about this at the Combine, and other defensive coaches, they don't know completely how to stop the mobile quarterback.
How about Jarran Reed? We go down this list of Seahawks that may be coming or going. What do you think he is, the defensive tackle who had such a great season 2 seasons ago, but maybe not so much last year?
Yeah, and that may put him in a prove-it type period. Now, if they don't go Clowney and they can't go Unique and Ndakwe in a trade and pay over $20 million, that may free up some room to go ahead and give a little bit more money to Reed, because I know they want him back. But here's the question, and you bring it up correctly, is that, okay, is he the 10.5 sack guy? Or is he the guy that played well on the run stopping but didn't get to the quarterback last year? That's what may put him in a prove-it deal. Now, he's going to probably want 10 to 12 to $13 million, maybe more than that. I think they're going to probably want to stay below $10 million and maybe on a short-term deal. But they would love to get Reed back. Because remember, the big problem that this team faces, aside from the right tackle position, is the fact that 5 of their defensive linemen, their contracts are up.
Well, I want to get to that right tackle position in a minute, but I do want to ask you about Trey Flowers before we switch to the offense. He had a rough game in Green Bay, but he's still a young guy. Is he the cornerback of the future? Like, should they go out and get another guy to compete with him, or where does he stand with this team?
Well, he's the cornerback, but he's the guy. They have to go ahead and try to find somebody to compete against him just to make him better. Now, they didn't do that with Shaquille Griffin, but because Shaquille didn't have a good second year, and then this past year he went to the Pro Bowl and was fantastic. Well, now Shaquille's going to work with Trey to kind of have that same type of season, because again, Trey's very receptive into the idea that he needs to get better. I know talking to him during the season, he was saying that, but the idea is that still he got beat too much this year, and again, part of it was the pass rush. He plays, with his hands, and sometimes that gets him the penalties. But he's good enough to be a Pro Bowl caliber cornerback, but to make sure that you have things right, you have to bring in somebody to challenge him.
You know what I love about Flowers is after that Packers game, we went up to his locker, and he basically said, yeah, I guess it's my job to tell you guys what happened. And like, he owned up to it, he held himself accountable, and I thought that was cool, because you don't see that a lot with pro athletes.
Well, really, what you saw it with Shaquille Griffin in that second year, but even more so with Trey Flowers, because I remember talking to him by about week 4 or week 5, and he was saying, "Yeah, I'm going through this mental process right now that I'm trying to correct this and correct that, and I'm not playing at that high level." Now, he didn't come out as strong as Shaquille Griffin at the end of the season and said, "I give myself a D minus for what I did on the field in the second year," but he was very hard on himself, and so I still think you look at his talent, and then think about this. I mean, he still was a safety in college. Now, he was the best coverage guy that he had on his college team, but he's still making the transition to cornerback. And so I still think next year he can really have a good year, but so much of it has to be with the pass rush.
Yeah, I think that's a good point you bring up, because I remember when Pete Carroll got Trey Flowers and they switched him, he just loved everything about him and even the early returns.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that was so positive about him, because even though he was a safety, guess what he studied in college? Richard Sherman tape, and looking at the footwork and trying to get the footwork down. And you can see he does work on that footwork. But then sometimes what ends up happening, he starts to use his hands, and then somebody will get a little bit behind him and he'll do a grab, and that doesn't work. And then the unfortunate part for him is that they were calling all those penalties closer this year than they had in past years, and that's what made it a little bit more difficult for him.
How about let's get to the right tackle position. Germain Ifedi is someone the fans love to hate, so to speak. But the coaches really have turned and they seem to appreciate his talent more and more. Where are we going to see him in a Seahawks uniform next
year? It depends on the price, because the one thing they do like about him is his availability. I mean, he was pretty consistent in being available and playing. And of course, for a line that had injuries up and down the line, that was very valuable. But you're right about the penalties. You're right about some of the mistakes and the fact that they don't know what he's going to get in free agency. I'm kind of figuring he's going to be an $8 million guy. There's other people that think he's going to get in that $10 to $11 million range. And if that's going to be the case, he's going to go. But where I thought at the end of the season, it's almost given that he won't be back. Now there's still a chance to get him back. And again, a lot of it has to also go to what George Fant is going to be asking for. Because if he's going to be asking for too much, then both options may be gone, and then they may have to go a different direction.
Can the Seahawks afford, and is it just a smart idea to invest in the offensive line when they have so many defensive issues? I mean, should they put their money more on that side of the ball?
Priority number one right now is defense, because, I mean, you can see, with Russell Wilson, with the offense, and even the offensive line struggles they had, they still won 11 games in a playoff game. And so much of that was the offense. The defense was the one thing that has to improve, because think about this and just look at the numbers. If you score 25 points on offense and you're giving up close to 25 on defense, that margin of difference is so tough. And they were fortunate to be able to win all those close games. That may not be as fortunate next year. That's why the idea is keep things in the offense where it's 25 or more points, but bring that defensive total down to 21 or less.
How about offensive lead addition of tight end Greg Olsen, older guy, veteran guy? If he can stay healthy, seems to be a good fit. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great fit, because, again, it's a great insurance policy, because ultimately the player of the present and the player of the future is Will Disley, but he's coming off the bad injury, and he should be available, but right now you can't guarantee it. At least what Pete is saying now, Pete Carroll, is that he should be there for the first game, but you can't guarantee it. And so in the meantime, you have Greg Olsen, who really can be sensational with Russell Wilson, particularly when they go zone. When they go zone on him, which of course, that gives the move, because he'll immediately get the ball. You saw how Russell was able to do it with Jacob Hollister, and now you can see him doing it with Greg Olsen, and you still have Hollister there. So it's a great insurance policy. I mean, you now check that box, because now you've got your tight end figured out if Disley doesn't make it back. And again, it's Olsen had some foot problems for a couple years. Last year he only missed 2 games, and that was because of a concussion issue. So overall, I think it was a great signing.
How about a quick tight end note with Luke Willson? He's a fan favorite. Can they bring him back on a team-friendly contract?
Oh, yeah. Well, he signed a team-friendly contract last year, and I'm sure he'll sign a team-friendly contract this year. And I didn't know, with the signing of Olsen, where that put Pete Carroll into thinking and John Snyder into thinking. But, yeah, I mean, they love the way he works in the locker room, because he's such a good, motivating type of guy. He's fun to be with, and if he's willing to take the minimum salary, they bring him back. Another guy they would bring back for a low salary would be Paul Richardson. who was let go by the Washington Redskins. Now, would they give him big money to be the third wide receiver? No, I don't think so. And this year, do you really want to pay too much for a third wide receiver when you know this is one of the deepest drafts for wide receivers? I mean, 25 to 27 guys are getting third-round grades or better at wide receiver in this draft. So if you're going to go for a third receiver, get it in the draft.
Okay, third receiver, and speaking of which, Jarran Brown had a couple of years to win that job and never quite got over the hump with that job. Is he a guy that's pretty much out the door?
Pretty much, unless he comes back for a low minimum salary type of deal too, because they do like David Moore. They still think the depth is right there, and in some way they've got to find a way to get John Ursula on the field. Now the reason he doesn't get on the field is because Tyler Lockett's so good in the slot. So now, I mean, if you put Tyler over at the flanker position and then try to move Ursula in, because I mean Ursula, they look at him very much like they did Doug Baldwin. The unfortunate thing is Ursula couldn't get on the field as a rookie as much as Baldwin.
Running back position, C.J. Prosise. We know the whole lineup got wiped out last year with injuries, but the great question I like to ask you on an annual basis, it seems like, is C.J. Prosise coming back? Where do you think he stands with the team?
I mean, he would have to really sign a low contract to be able to come back. Now, again, he'll be healthy enough to come back, but it's probably time to move on to a different thing because the injury thing has always plagued him, and can you count on him? This year, they were able to count on a little bit more than they have in the past years, but like, for example, if he can get more than $1.7 million, I think he's gone.
What about the argument that they need to use more of Russell Wilson's offensive talents and get away from handing the ball off all the time? Put the ball in Russell's hands more, and that would make this offense move better. Where do you stand on that argument?
I think, take the philosophy that's worked in the past couple of years. If you have the ability to run the football, you can wear a team down. And you watched in the second half of 2018, they averaged 30 points a game. You can't do too much better than that. Now, this past year, the offensive line did not play up to the level it did in 2018, and so they came back a little bit more, but it still was good enough to be able to do it. I think the only thing that needs to change, and this is coming from Russell Wilson, maybe a little bit more tempo. To do some tempo type of things. But to change things around and make it a passing offense, that'd be a mistake, because do you really have the pass blocking to be able to make that work? Because what you don't want to have is more hits on Russell Wilson that can get him hurt.
When you talk about tempo, are you talking about no huddle, or are you talking about just keeping pace and moving the offense fast?
Just keeping pace and moving the offense a little bit faster. I think that's what Russell's talking about. So you may have a little bit of no huddle, but mixing that in. Now, the one thing this team has tried to do is run the ball as early as they can in the first quarter and try to set it up that way, but they might have to mix things a little bit more. In year number one with Brian Schottenheimer, that wouldn't have been a wise thing to do, because you're setting what you want as the agenda, and that was going to be the running offense. And really, the only time that you could complain that maybe they tried to run too late in the game was in the Dallas game in the playoffs. Well, this past year, you notice they did more things. And when you have Russell Wilson, who right now is in his prime, you can argue he's now one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the league. You want to take advantage of it, but not too much. I mean, you want to run the football. And if you look at all the playoff teams, most of the top ones for the last couple of years, they've all had the ability to run the football.
Any other concerns with the Seahawks team? You've talked about these topics all throughout the offseason. Is there something that stands out in your mind?
I think the big thing is the concerns coming back off some of these major injuries. You got Chris Carson coming back from the hip. Fortunately, he didn't need surgery. You've got Rashad Penny, who's probably going to start the season on the physically unable to perform list. So you may get him 7 weeks into the season. So that's a concern. Disley coming off the Achilles. Justin Britt coming off his ACL. I mean, these are long-term injuries that they have to fight and try to come back from. And so now what it comes down to is trying to get enough guys healthy and see where the depth is. I mean, last year on paper, and I think you can see it during the season, this was a deep team. But when you take 3 running backs away right at the end of the season, that's what cost them from being a number 1 seed into being now a wild card team that was able to win a game but not go as deep into playoffs as they would want.
You pretty confident that Britt comes back from his injury?
Yeah, it's just going to be a matter of time. And that's, I know there's so many people trying to, do everybody's cap, right? They want to try to give the cap and try to cut players' salaries. It's like, listen, they got $53 million of cap room. That's not an issue. So they need to add talent, not subtract talent, or put the players in a position where they're not going to be happy. And like you see it now every day. Somebody they asked to do, Christian Kirksey this week, he was asked to take a cap hit in Cleveland. For heaven's sake, Cleveland doesn't need to lose players, but they had to cut him because he wouldn't take the pay cut. You don't need to do that.
Let's broaden it a little bit. Seahawks play at Atlanta and at Miami. Speculation is one of those games will be played in London. What are the odds the Seahawks will play a game in London?
I think reasonably decent. Really? I mean, yeah. I mean, the one I was wondering about was Mexico because, Arizona has a game in Mexico, but then if you're Arizona, that's a division game. Do you really want to play and take away a home game against a team that you need to try to compete and win against? That's why there is a chance that that could happen. I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent. We made one trip to London, and flying right now is not the best thing, but maybe by the fall it should be okay. But no, I think there's a chance that that could happen.
Listen, on a personal note, I don't want to go back there, but they have such a huge following there, and the NFL had to be impressed with what they saw when the Seahawks played the Raiders.
That's why I think there's a chance.
Man, oh man. Okay, all right. Tom Brady, he's going to be 43 when the season starts. He's been the subject of a ton of speculation this offseason. Where do you think he's going to play next year?
I still think he's going to play in New England, but you can see anything's up for grab. And if you look for the way I break it down, I even had to do this for the Washington Post, all the scenarios and all that stuff. I put Tennessee in the number 1 position to try to get him. I put the Las Vegas Raiders in the number 2 position to get him. And then I put, believe it or not, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the number 3 position. Because they're going to put the franchise tag likely on Shaq Barrett, their pass rushing linebacker. And Jameis Winston then is probably going to leave. And you know that when asked at the Combine, Bruce Arians said, "What do you think about the free agent quarterbacks?" And he goes, "Well, Brady." Brought it up. It's like, and then, I mean, you saw at the Syracuse game on a couple weeks ago on a Saturday, both Julian Edelman and Tom Brady were at the game, and guess what? Guess who FaceTimed him? It was Mike Vrabel of the Tennessee Titans, and they've got Ryan Tannehill up. So I can see those 3 scenarios, but that's the interesting thing because nobody knows. And, for example, people have made too much out of the idea that Brady doesn't have an offer. Well, they haven't known what the cap is. How can you make him an offer? So what's going to come down starting Monday, he is going to be for the first time, hitting free agency. In fact, I said his first taste of free agency is going to be a feast because he's going to have 6 to 7 teams try to talk to him in a 48-hour period. But in the meantime, the Patriots have to get a deal because if they can't get a deal by Tuesday night, then they have to take an additional $6.7 million cap hit, moving up a thing if there's no CBA, and possibly then make it even tougher to get him back.
How much does he? What would be a contract for Brady?
I say 34, 33 million.
Yeah.
Now remember, he's since 2013, he's been paid, and he's allowed this to happen, 70 cents on the dollar. I know Over the Cap did a study, and they think he saved them over $30 million of room that they can use for other players. But what's Bill Belichick do? He'll get rid of a player before the end. He'll trade a Jamie Collins. He'll trade a Chandler Jones. Last year, he starved him on offense to a point there was, other than Edelman and Chris White out of the backfield, there was nobody to throw to. Well, you can see he wasn't happy about that. So he needs the commitment to know they're going to get some players and get them better talent on offense, and then also what they're going to pay him. And it's not like he wants to be overpaid. Just give him a little bit more than 70 cents on the dollar.
You see a scenario where, because there's some cowboy chatter too. Is that just garbage?
That's garbage. I mean, it's like, okay, so here you have Dak Prescott. You're trying to get him for $33 million, and you can keep him on the exclusive franchise tag for $33 million. They've got to try to keep Amari Cooper. They've got to try to keep a couple other guys, and they're going to pay $34 million for a 43-year-old quarterback. Not happening.
All right, I got to ask you this because there's, you talk about Brady and some of these upper tier quarterbacks and superstars. The importance of quarterbacks in an NFL team. Will we ever see a team break the mold of paying their quarterbacks $35 to $40 million per season and spread the wealth among the team to strengthen the team as a whole?
Now, you always got to pay the quarterback. I mean, what you try to do is the model that Seattle and other teams have done. The Rams did it. It's like you got a quarterback that's on his rookie contract. That's when you try to load up as much as you can on free agency and try to get as much out of there. But eventually you have to pay the quarterback, because if you don't pay the quarterback, you're not going to do well. I mean, you notice, who was the quarterback who went to the Super Bowl this past year? It was Patrick Mahomes. The thing that kind of changes the equation as far as that goes, because they say, well, you can't pay a quarterback, and because you look at all the guys and how many Super Bowls. Well, that was because Tom Brady went to 9 AFC championship games and won. And so he went to 9 Super Bowls. So that's what skewed the numbers.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you look at it like that, yes, but it's like you hear some of the defensive players and some of the other stars on the team saying, is this guy really $20 million better than I am? So I just look at that and I listen to the arguments. I'm like, boy, it would be kind of interesting to see if a team says, you know what, we'll pay our quarterback, $20 million, we'll spread the wealth and bring it, fatten up the defensive side of the ball, things like that.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing, because they always make the wrong thing, and they say defense wins championships. No, quarterbacks win championships. Because say what you want about a defense can hold a team down to 3, 7, 10 points in the fourth quarter, right? But the difference is the quarterback can come on the field, make a 45-second field goal drive to win it, come back and get 2 touchdown drives, and you've watched Russell Wilson now for his entire career having the ability to make those fourth quarter comebacks. That's what the difference is. It's the fourth quarter comeback ability and the ability to lead the offense and get points on the board, particularly at the right time. If you're a defensive player, you can make a couple big plays in the fourth quarter. If you can be a quarterback, you can get 14 to 21 points in the fourth quarter. Look what Patrick Mahomes did in winning the Super Bowl.
We know the quarterbacks aren't, the star quarterbacks aren't a big fan of the CBA that's being proposed. 17th game and an extra playoff team in each conference. Give me your opinion about the proposed CBA.
I'm not a big fan of the 17 games because, looking at the players and understanding because again, I track injuries all the time and I see how the injury totals is. And you're going to have, that's going to increase the injury total over 2,000 missed starts if you're going to be talking about, 17 games, and that's not good. But also from the standpoint, this is kind of a Gene Upshaw type of deal. And Gene was always looking, for the rank and file to get things better. And the rank and file in this deal, they get about a 20% increase in base salary. They don't have to practice as less. But the key right now is you can argue all you want whether it's a good deal or a bad deal. If this deal is not voted in, it's going to be a lockout or a strike next year. There's no question about it because the TV money is ripe at the moment to be able to get an excellent deal. 40% to 50% increase in TV revenue, which right now is $7.3 million. That's going to probably take it over $10 billion. $10 billion in TV. The cap will go up to like $220 million when that 17th game is added. So that's where the big money is. And of course, like it or not, if you vote it down, there's going to be problems.
When we talk about Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, a couple of the highest paid Seahawks, they're against it. They've come out and said they're against the CBA. It feels like the superstars in the NFL want to turn this down, and it's like their battle with the commoners of the NFL who really want that extra money. Can you help explain a little bit why there's why the high paid guys don't like it and the lower paid guys like it?
Okay, so you're talking about Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, guys that have been in the league 8 or more years, okay? They've been through all these long 16-game seasons. Bobby Wagner has to go get his knee, freed up a little bit each year because, the drain on that. Russell Wilson somehow amazingly has been able to survive and not miss a game. And even though he's had injuries and all that stuff, their bodies have been through it. Okay, so they understand it. And, sure, it'll be able to, when you're negotiating a new contract, to get the money up, but then you've already had all those games and you can understand the wear and tear on your body, where if you're going to be a player in the rank and file, you're on your rookie contract, you're making the NFL minimum, and what you're looking at is that you don't know if you're going to have a job next year. And so that's where the difference is. And so those are the ones that are going to get, the bigger increases as far as percentage, because like for a base salary for a rookie will go from $510 up to like about $600,000. And then eventually by 2029, the lowest paid base salary is going to be over $1 million. Now, it's not like the guys are getting rich because you're only going up like 90,000 or so each year. But what it does do is it gives you the ability to make a little bit more, practice a little bit less, and get more benefits. But also you take advantage of the TV money. So from the guys who don't know what their future is, they'll go for it, where the guys who have seen what has happened to their bodies in the past, they're not going to want it and never will want it.
But odds are this thing's going to go.
I think so, yeah. I mean, because it still looks like when you're looking at the union of 2,000 people and 1,100 of the people are making the minimum. Now, one of the things I think happened initially, and this may be a problem, is that I know a lot of the votes wanted to change because some of the ones who submitted their things last Thursday, Friday, there was probably more no's than they probably wanted, and they wanted to change their vote maybe to a yes. But in the end, the Players Association board basically said no to that because the 32 player reps voted against that, and so that's now not going to happen. But still, I think only about half the votes are in so far. So as long as the remaining half can come in and vote it in, it's going to pass.
All right, let's flip it back to the Seahawks as we wrap it up. Schneider is always famous for trading that first-round pick. It is 27th overall. Do you think they'll trade that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, but here's the interesting one, because I know it was brought up last week. Tony Pauline, who does a lot of draft stuff, came up with one that he was hearing, and it sounds like a John Schneider deal. Okay, so you go from 27 to 41. This is with Jacksonville. So they get the 41st pick. They give up the 61st pick, which is the pick that they have, and then they keep their 64th pick, which is the Kansas City pick. So they'll be with the 2 second-round picks like they are so often. And then after the franchise tag is then put on Unique Ndakwe, then you can get him and see if you can sign him for $18 to $21 million a year. But the problem is, at the moment, as we speak now, Jacksonville doesn't want to trade him because they're mad at him, because he came out and says, I don't want to be with Jacksonville. I want to go to a different team. It's time to do that. And it's like they have to franchise him because he's too valuable and they need him on the team. But also they've got cap problems. They're tight against the cap. So now if they put the franchise tag on and struggle with the cap, maybe they have to trade Calais Campbell. So there's difficulties there. But that sounds like a John Schneider deal. And really, when you look at the big picture, and this draft, and coming back from the combine, it's kind of weak up top for edge pass rushers. Because now I only had 4 going in my mock draft in the first round, and so the third one may not be as good. You have one that's running in the 5 and the 40s, so that's not going to work. So that may not be the right answer there. And of course, it's a deep draft for tackles, which could help at right tackle, but that might be the 6th or 7th right tackle. So knowing John Schneider, he'll probably trade down, but I do think that Ngakoue trade is something to consider.
Well, there's so many interesting things when it comes to up to draft day and on draft day. But the combine, do you still enjoy that?
I enjoyed it more in the past. No, I enjoyed it more in the past, but I mean, this year they shortened it so much, because what they ended up doing is that they had all the workouts from Thursday night to Sunday night. And so now here we were. It's like, we can't stay. It's like I only went there for 2 days. Because, I mean, you have to talk to the coaches and general managers Tuesday. You can get the players from 8 to 11 for 4 days. And so now I get to Wednesday, and so now the coaches aren't roaming around. You can't find them. You can't find the general managers. And so it's like, after that, I just left on Thursday. So I don't like it as much. Normally, in the old days, I would go Tuesday to Monday, because Monday what happened is all you had was the defensive backs working out, and the GMs and the coaches are all tired and they're walking out and you can catch them. That stopped. Now they got these workouts going all evening, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you don't have the ability to even get to see the coaches.
Man, just talking to you, I know you've done so much in your career and you've had so many jobs, but as we wrap it up here, I see what you're doing now and you're always on the go. What was the first job you had?
The first job I had, and it wasn't paid for, but I was, in 1972, I was writing for the St. Mary's Daily Press, okay? And I would do 3 Steelers stories a week. And so that was the 1972 team with immaculate reception and all that. And so I'd go to Wednesday press conferences. I'd go to the games. I wouldn't go to the road games, but I'd go to the home games. And of course, the great part on that one was that here I was an NFL PR person standing next to me, and we're in the auxiliary press box. Franco Harris makes the immaculate receptions, coming right down toward my seat in the auxiliary press box, which is the baseball press box, and scoring the touchdown, and everybody goes crazy. I turn to the PR guy and says, "Is there a replay? That's an illegal catch."
Man, but how cool was that for you to be at that game?
Oh, yeah. But I was at that game, and it's like, well, that's an illegal catch because it bounced off of Frenchie Fuqua. And you could see that, but it stayed on, and it turned out to be one of the great plays in NFL history. And then I was able to go down to the Super Bowl at Tulane Stadium and watch them beat the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, man. You've got some history for sure. So that's obviously one of a lot of people's favorite game and most memorable games, but maybe one of yours as well. Is there another one that stands out?
Yeah, I was on the sidelines for the catch, the San Francisco game, where you had the great catch in the back of the end zone with Montana driving. And I was standing right behind the Dallas bench, and you can hear them say, you guys aren't going to do that. And it's like, come on, you got come on, defense. And you can see the panic in the eyes of all the Cowboys, and here that pass goes to Dwight Clark, and it was the catch. That was phenomenal. And then, being able to watch that one big interception in that Steeler game, 11 years ago down in Miami when James Harrison made that big pick right before the half. half. I mean, I've been so fortunate. You know, I've been to 43 Super Bowls, 31 combines, seen a lot of good football.
Well, next time we get together, we'll just talk about John Clayton's career, and we'll leave all the other stuff out. I'm sure you got some great stories to tell. All right, John, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot, man.
Hey, thank you.